The council chamber on Concordia Prime stretched wider than most cities. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area designed for their specific needs. The methane breathers had their sealed chambers. The aquatic species floated in their suspension tanks. The energy beings flickered in their containment fields. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the human section, which was modest compared to most others. Humanity had only 14 colony worlds. They were newcomers to galactic civilization, barely 200 years since first contact. Many species still saw them as children playing at politics. The holographic display at the chamber's center showed a dying world. Allar, the homeworld of the Allari people, burned under attack. 7 of their 12 colony worlds had already gone silent. The images showed cities reduced to organic matter, buildings consumed and reformed into grotesque hives. The Vertux swarm had come, and they were hungry. Tashen, the Allari ambassador, stood before the council. His forearms trembled with age and exhaustion. His skin, normally a soft blue, had turned gray with stress. Elena remembered meeting him when she first took this position. He had been kind to her, patient with her questions about galactic law. "We ask for military intervention," Tashen said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The swarm will not stop until every Allari world is consumed." Councillor Vrex of the Corthian Empire leaned forward in his seat. His scaled face showed no sympathy. "The non-interference doctrine is clear. Conflicts between established member species cannot be interfered with by the Council. To do so would require a unanimous vote." "The swarm is not a member species," Tashen protested. "They are a plague that—" "They were contacted and declined membership," Vrex interrupted. "That makes them an independent civilization. We cannot take sides." Elena watched as other species nodded in agreement. The truth was simpler than their legal words. Nobody wanted to fight the swarm. The Vertok had terrorized the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were endless, reproducing faster than anyone could kill them. Entire species had gone extinct trying to stop them. "Then we will fight alone," Tashen said quietly. He looked across the chamber, making eye contact with each ambassador. When his gaze reached Elena, she saw something there. Recognition, memory, a question. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She saw her grandmother's face in her mind. Grandmother had been only 5 years old during the Cascade Plague. She remembered the sickness that turned people's blood to poison. She remembered watching her parents die, watching half the world die. 8 billion people dead in 6 months. Then the Allari came. They violated every quarantine law in the galaxy to bring the cure. They risked infection themselves. 50,000 Allari died bringing that cure to Earth. They did it because, as Tashen's predecessor had said, no child should watch their world die. Elena opened her eyes and stood. "Ambassador Tashen, please sit. Your people have suffered enough today." Tashen looked confused but sat down slowly. Elena walked to the center of the chamber, where normally only the council speaker stood. Several species began to protest, but she raised her hand. 200 years ago, humanity was dying, Elena said. Her voice carried clearly through the translation systems. "A plague we created ourselves in a laboratory accident was killing us. We had no cure. We had no hope. We sent out a distress signal, but every species in this chamber ignored it. Every species except one," she pointed at Tashen. "The Allari came. They broke quarantine laws. They risked their own people. 50,000 Allari died bringing us the cure. They saved 8 billion humans. We were refugees, broken and desperate. They gave us everything." "A touching story," Vrex said dismissively. "But the Allari made that choice themselves. There was no contract, no debt in the legal sense." Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're right, Counselor. There was no legal debt, but the Terran Coalition does not operate on legal debts alone." She turned to face the entire council. "We were told when we joined this council that galactic civilization operates on 3 principles: trade, law, and memory. Today, humanity invokes the 3rd principle. We remember what the Allari did. We remember every single one of the 50,000 who died to save us." "What exactly are you saying, Ambassador?" the council speaker asked. "The Terran Coalition formally declares our intention to honor the Allari Accord of 2187. We are going to save the Allari, just as they saved us." For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then several species began to laugh. The Corthians laughed loudest. "With all respect," Vrex said, still chuckling, Humanity has 14 worlds and a modest defense fleet. The Vertex swarm has consumed hundreds of civilizations. What do you think you can possibly do? Elena's smile didn't waver. We will do what needs to be done. The human delegation formally withdraws from this session to make preparations. Ambassador Tishen, we will contact you within 12 hours with our deployment timeline. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her two aides scrambled to follow her. Ambassador Vasquez, the council speaker, called out. The council cannot support this action. You will receive no reinforcements, no supplies, no medical aid. Elena stopped at the doorway and looked back. We don't need your support. We need you to watch and remember. Remember what happens when someone threatens those we care about. The door closed behind her. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Most species were dismissive. Humanity was overconfident, they said. The swarm would consume their ships just like it consumed everything else. But a few species remained quiet. The Eldrin, ancient and wise, exchanged worried looks. They had studied human history. They knew what humans did to each other during their wars. If humans could be that brutal to their own kind, what would they do to an enemy? In his seat, Tishen felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was there. He remembered the stories from 200 years ago. How the Allar diplomatic ship had arrived at Earth to find cities burning with funeral pyres. How the human officials had cried when the Allar delivered the cure. How the human children had made drawings for the Allar volunteers, pictures of aliens and humans holding hands under a sun that was finally rising again. The humans remembered. In a galaxy where most species forgot favors within a generation, the humans remembered. Counselor Vrex was already composing his report to the Korthian High Command. Humanity was acting foolishly, he wrote. They would lose ships, lose people, and gain nothing but the swarm's attention. Let them learn their lesson the hard way. But as he wrote, a junior aide approached with a datapad. Sir, our intelligence division asked me to deliver this immediately. Vrex glanced at the pad. Then he read it more carefully. Then he stood up, his confidence draining away. The report was simple. Humanity was mobilizing. Not just their official fleet, everything, every colony, every ship, every resource. Within 6 hours of Elena's declaration, 3 billion humans had volunteered for military service. Within 12 hours, human vessels were already moving toward Allar space. The report ended with a single line that made Rex's blood run cold. Sir, they're not sending an expeditionary force. They're sending an extermination fleet. In her private quarters, Elena sat alone looking at a picture on her desk. Her grandmother, at age 70, standing next to an elderly Allar volunteer. Both of them were at a memorial ceremony, honoring those who died during the plague and those who died bringing the cure. Her grandmother had made Elena promise something before she died. If the Allar ever need us, you help them. You don't ask permission. You don't count the cost. You help them because that's what you do for family. Elena picked up her communicator and entered a single code. Across human space, the Ember Protocol activated. The message was simple. The Allar saved us. Now we save them. Within minutes, humanity began to move like a single organism united in purpose. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. They always paid their debts. Always. And mercy to anyone who stood in their way. The emergency broadcast reached every human world at the same moment. Schools stopped teaching. Factories stopped production. Even the mining stations in the asteroid belts went quiet as everyone listened to the message. On the colony world of New Terra, Marcus Chen was in his garden when his communicator buzzed with the priority alert. He was 73 years old, retired from the Navy for 15 years. His hands were dirty from planting tomatoes. Those hands had once commanded a destroyer during the Titan Belt Wars. The message was simple. Ember Protocol activated. The Allar need us. All veterans report for duty. Marcus looked at his tomato plants. They would die without care. Then he thought about the Allar doctor who had held his mother's hand as the cure took effect. 200 years ago, in a family story passed down through generations. His grandmother had been 8 months pregnant with his father when the plague hit. The Allar had saved 2 generations of his family with that one injection. He went inside and pulled his old uniform from the closet. It still fit. Across human space, millions of others did the same. On Concordia Station, an alien news crew filmed the human docking bay. They expected to see maybe a few military ships preparing to leave. What they saw instead made their translator implants malfunction in confusion. Hundreds of ships were arriving. Not military vessels, but civilian transports, cargo haulers, even luxury yachts. Each one was being rapidly converted. Welding torches sparked in the darkness. Military contractors worked around the clock installing weapon systems on anything that could fly. "This is impossible," the Korthian reporter said to his camera. "They're turning their entire civilian fleet into warships." "Who does that?" His human assistant, a young woman named Sarah, answered quietly. "People who remember." On Earth, the Terran Coalition High Command had not slept in 72 hours. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen, promoted from his old rank when he reported for duty, stood before a holographic display showing the entire human sphere of influence. "Status report," he ordered. His second-in-command, Admiral Park, highlighted different regions. New Terra has mobilized 3 million volunteers. Mars Colony has converted 215 civilian vessels. The Jupiter stations are sending their entire security fleet. All 14 colony worlds have exceeded volunteer quotas by 400%. What about the Reaper divisions? Admiral Park's expression darkened. All 6 divisions have reported ready status. Captain Okonkwo's Division 7 is already in transit. A junior officer raised his hand nervously. "Sir, the Galactic Council is asking for clarification on our force commitment. They want to know how many ships we're sending." Marcus smiled grimly. "Tell them all of them, sir. All of them. Every ship that can fly. Every soldier who can fight. Send that message exactly as I said it." The junior officer paled but nodded and hurried away. Admiral Park moved closer and lowered his voice. "Marcus, the Council thinks we're sending maybe 50 ships. When they see 2,000 vessels, they're going to panic." "Let them panic," Marcus said. "Better they fear us than pity the Allari." He pulled up another screen, one showing classified files. Research projects that had been running for decades. Weapon systems that had never been tested in combat. Counter-swarm tactics that humanity had developed in secret, waiting for an excuse to use them. After the Cascade Plague, humanity had made a decision. Never again would they be helpless. They had studied every threat in the galaxy. The Vertex Swarm had been at the top of that list. "Contact Captain Okonkwo," Marcus ordered. "Tell her the Reapers are authorized to use Protocol Black if necessary." Admiral Park's eyes widened. "Sir, Protocol Black has never been field tested." "We don't know if the Swarm has never faced humans before," Marcus interrupted. "They don't know what we're capable of. It's time they learned." Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the stealth ship Shadow of Earth. Around her, the 100 members of Reaper Division 7 prepared their equipment. Unlike regular soldiers, the Reapers wore heavy armor designed for close combat. They carried flamethrowers, plasma cutters, and kinetic weapons that fired explosive rounds. "Captain, we're approaching Allari space," her pilot reported. Sarah nodded. She had faced the Swarm once before, 5 years ago. During a rescue mission on a border station, she had watched the Swarm consume her squad mates, absorbing them into its biomass. She had escaped only because she had been willing to detonate charges that buried her in rubble for 3 days. She had nightmares about it still. But she had also learned something important. The Swarm was used to enemies who ran. The Swarm didn't know how to handle prey that fought back with absolute brutality. "Listen up," she called out to her team. "The Swarm thinks it's the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. Today we teach it the truth. Today it meets humanity." Her soldiers cheered. They were all volunteers. They all had reasons to be here. Some had families saved by Allari doctors during the plague. Others simply believed in paying debts. All of them were ready to walk into hell itself. On Concordia Station, the Galactic Council had reconvened in emergency session. The holographic display showed the human mobilization in real time. "This is madness," a Silthi representative said, her tentacles coiling in distress. "They're mobilizing their entire civilization for war." Councillor Vrex watched the display with growing unease. Intelligence reports kept coming in, each one more alarming than the last. Human colonies were manufacturing weapons around the clock. Civilian factories had converted to military production. Even school children were helping by running supply lines and communications. But what really worried Vrex was the classified intelligence report sitting on his datapad. His agents had uncovered something disturbing. Humanity had been preparing for large-scale war for 200 years, not just training soldiers or building ships. They had been developing strategies, weapons, and tactics for fighting every major threat in the galaxy. They had been preparing to fight the swarm specifically. They knew this day would come, Vrex said quietly. What? The Silthy representative asked. They knew the swarm would eventually threaten the Allari. They've been preparing for this exact scenario for 2 centuries. The council speaker, an ancient Eldrin, nodded slowly. The humans have a saying. The best way to honor the dead is to protect the living. They have not forgotten the 50,000 Allari who died for them. On the view screen, the human fleet began to arrive at the staging point near Allari space. First dozens of ships appeared. Then hundreds, then thousands. How many ships do they have? Someone asked in shock. The tactical officer checked his readings 3 times before answering. 2,047 vessels, Counselor, ranging from converted cargo haulers to what appear to be... Wait, what is it? Sir, I'm reading 30 ships of a class I've never seen before. They're massive, dreadnought class at least. When did humans build dreadnoughts? Nobody had an answer. Humanity had hidden its true strength from the galaxy. The communication came directly from Admiral Chen's flagship, the Cascadia's Promise. It was broadcast on all frequencies meant for both the Allari and the Swarm. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Coalition to all Virtak Swarm forces in Allari space. You have 12 hours to withdraw completely. We are here to collect a debt. 200 years ago, the Allari gave everything to save humanity. Today, humanity gives everything to save them. There was a pause, then Chen's voice grew colder. We will accept payment for this debt in 2 ways. You can leave peacefully, or we can take payment in blood. The choice is yours. You have 12 hours. The transmission ended. In the council chamber, several species looked sick. The Eldrin speaker closed all 6 of his eyes. What have we done? A junior ambassador whispered. We laughed at them. We dismissed them. No, the speaker said quietly. We forgot the most important rule about humans. Never ever back them into a corner, and never threaten what they love. Tishan watched the human fleet from the command center of Allar Seth. Tears ran down his face, but they were not tears of sadness. For the first time in months he felt hope. Real hope. His aide approached nervously. Ambassador, the human fleet composition is unusual. Many of their ships are civilian vessels with hastily installed weapons. They're not a proper military force, Tishan smiled. You don't understand. This isn't a military force. This is an entire civilization going to war. Every human who could hold a weapon volunteered. They're not sending soldiers. They're sending everyone. But the swarm has never faced anyone like this before, Tishan interrupted. He looked at the fleet display, at the 2,000 human ships arranged in precise formation. The swarm consumes. That's all it knows. But humanity? Humanity protects. And when you threaten what humanity protects, you don't face an army. You face the wrath of an entire species. The 12-hour deadline ticked down. The swarm did not respond. The swarm did not withdraw. The swarm had no concept of fear. It had consumed civilizations for 3,000 years. It knew only hunger. It was about to learn something new. The 12 hours passed in silence. The Virtak swarm did not respond to the human ultimatum. They simply continued their work, consuming the 4th Allari colony world, breaking down its buildings and people into raw materials for their hive structures. The swarm had existed for over 3,000 years. In that time, thousands of species had threatened them. Millions of soldiers had fought them. All had failed. All had been consumed. The swarm did not understand the concept of retreat. It only understood hunger and growth. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of Cascadia's Promise, watching the tactical display. His fleet was arranged in a formation no galactic military expert would recognize. It wasn't designed for territory control or defensive positions. It was designed for one purpose, complete elimination of enemy forces. Time's up, he said quietly. All ships, this is Chen. Execute Operation Clean Sweep, no mercy. No prisoners. Leave nothing alive. The human fleet moved forward. The first engagement happened at Allara 4, a mining colony that had been overrun 3 weeks earlier. The swarm had converted the entire surface into a breeding ground, with organic towers reaching into the sky like grotesque monuments. The Galactic Council had set up observers to watch the battle. They expected to see a conventional engagement. Ships firing energy weapons from long range, maybe boarding parties if humans were foolish enough to try. What they saw instead made several species vomit in their breathing apparatus. The human ships didn't maintain a safe distance. They flew directly into the swarm's defensive formations, taking damage but never slowing down. When they got close enough, they deployed weapons the galaxy had never seen. Incendiary bombs rained down on the colony surface. The fires burned white-hot, specifically designed to reach temperatures that would destroy swarm biomass at the cellular level. Entire sections of the hive structures melted and collapsed. "What are those weapons?" a Corthian observer asked in horror. The human military liaison, a young lieutenant, answered without emotion. "Cleanser bombs. Mixture of magnesium, thermite, and specialized compounds. Burns at 4,000 degrees. Nothing organic survives." "But the colony itself is already lost," the lieutenant interrupted. "The Allar, I understand. Infrastructure can be rebuilt. People cannot be brought back. We're not here to save buildings. We're here to kill the swarm." On the ground, Reaper Division 7 had landed near a swarm hive entrance. Captain Sarah Okonkwo led her team into the tunnels without hesitation. They carried flamethrowers and kinetic weapons loaded with explosive ammunition. The swarm defenders rushed at them in waves. The creatures were fast, deadly, and numerous. Against most species, this would have been enough. But Sarah's Reapers didn't retreat. They didn't show fear. They walked forward, burning everything in their path. "Remember your training," Sarah called out over the comm. "They expect you to run. When you don't, they don't know what to do."
"Keep pushing forward."
A swarm warrior 8 feet tall with razor claws leaped at her. Sarah ducked, shoved her flamethrower into its face, and held the trigger. The creature's scream was cut short as it collapsed into burning ash. The Reapers pushed deeper into the hive. They found breeding chambers filled with swarm eggs. They burned them all. They found processing centers where captured Allari were being broken down into organic material. They killed every swarm creature there and gave the Allari victims the mercy of quick deaths. By the time they emerged 6 hours later, the entire hive was a smoking ruin. In the council chambers, the observers watched in stunned silence. A battle that should have taken days was over in hours. "The swarm had lost completely. How?" someone whispered. "How did they win so easily?" Counselor Vrex, who had been reviewing human historical files for days now, answered in a hollow voice. "Because they've been fighting wars like this for their entire history. Not wars for territory, wars for survival. Wars where defeat means extinction." He pulled up files on his display, images of human conflicts throughout their history. They fought 2 world wars that killed millions of their own people. They fought on Mars for 100 years. They fought in their asteroid belts until entire stations were destroyed. And they never stopped learning how to kill more efficiently. The Eldrin speaker nodded sadly. "We invited children into our council. We forgot they were children who had been fighting since they learned to walk. The battle for Allara 7 was different. The swarm had taken this colony more recently, and they had captured thousands of Allari civilians. The swarm was using them as living shields and incubators for their young. Captain Okonkwo's team was called in for this mission. They landed at the main settlement, which had been transformed into a nightmare. Buildings were covered in organic matter. The streets writhed with swarm workers. And in the central plaza, they found the breeding facility. Sarah had seen many terrible things in her career. She had watched friends die. She had killed enemies in dozens of battles. But what she saw in that facility made something break inside her. Allari civilians, still alive, implanted with swarm eggs. They begged for death. Children, barely old enough to walk, being used as incubators. "Reapers," Sarah said, her voice completely calm. "New orders. We don't take any prisoners. We don't capture any samples. We don't leave any swarm alive. Not one, not a single organism. Burn everything." What followed was not a battle. It was extermination. The Reapers moved through the facility with mechanical precision, killing every swarm creature they found. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their bare hands. The swarm tried to retreat. The Reapers pursued. The swarm tried to hide. The Reapers hunted them down. By the end, Sarah's armor was covered in swarm blood, and her eyes were empty of everything except cold determination. She gave the Allari victims mercy. Quick and painless. Then she set charges throughout the facility and reduced it to atoms. Deep in swarm territory, something unprecedented happened. The node mind, the closest thing the swarm had to leadership, felt something it had never experienced in 3,000 years. Fear. The swarm was a collective intelligence. Every creature was connected. When swarm creatures died, the node mind felt it. Usually losses were acceptable. Resources were infinite. Time was meaningless. But the human attacks were different. Entire hives were going silent. Thousands of swarm creatures dying in minutes. The humans didn't just kill, they erased. They left nothing behind. No survivors, no eggs, no possibility of regeneration. The node mind analyzed the threat. Humans were few in number compared to the swarm. They should be easy to overwhelm with superior numbers. But every time the swarm sent more creatures, the humans adapted faster. The swarm tried ambushes. The humans expected them. The swarm tried overwhelming force. The humans welcomed it, killing more efficiently when targets were concentrated. The swarm tried retreat and regroup. The humans pursued relentlessly. For the first time in its existence, the node mind made a decision based not on hunger, but on survival. It ordered a full withdrawal from Allar space. The retreat began at Allar 9. Swarm ships, organic vessels grown rather than built, started pulling back from the planet. They thought the humans would let them go. They were wrong. Admiral Chen's orders were clear: pursue and destroy. The human fleet didn't just push the swarm back. They hunted every ship, every creature, every trace of swarm presence. "Sir, the swarm is retreating," Admiral Park reported. "Should we hold position?" "No," Chen said coldly. "We didn't come here to push them back. We came here to make sure they never threaten the Allar again."
Keep firing.
"Kill them all." The space battles were brutal and one-sided. Human ships had been designed to fight the swarm specifically. Their weapons targeted swarm biology. Their tactics assumed swarm behavior. 200 years of preparation showed in every engagement. The swarm lost ships by the hundreds. They lost territory they had held for decades. Most importantly, they lost something else: their reputation of being unstoppable. 6 weeks after the first human ship entered Allar space, the last swarm creature was driven out. The 7 conquered colonies were smoking ruins, but they were free. The Allar had lost billions in property damage and hundreds of thousands of their people, but they had survived. On Allar Seth, Tishen stood in the capital square as human soldiers marched through in victory parade. The Allar civilians cheered and threw flowers. Children ran up to the humans with drawings and gifts, but Tishen noticed something the celebrating crowds did not. The human soldiers didn't look happy. They looked tired, haunted. Many of them carried a weight in their eyes that spoke of terrible things seen and done. Sarah Okonkwo walked past, her Reaper division in formation behind her. Tishen reached out and gently touched her arm. "Captain," he said quietly, "thank you. You saved my people." Sarah looked at him, and Tishen saw something in her eyes that frightened him. Not hatred, not anger, just a cold, empty determination. "We're not done yet, Ambassador," she said. "The swarm still exists. They might come back. We're going to make sure they can't." "You mean, we're pursuing them into their own territory?" "Admiral's orders. We don't stop until the threat is completely eliminated." Tishen felt his breath catch. "Captain, the Council will never allow—" "The Council doesn't get a vote," Sarah interrupted. "We came to collect a debt. The Allar gave us everything to save us." The Galactic Council emergency session had been going for 6 hours. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the chamber, facing the united anger of 47 species. "Your forces have pushed beyond Allar territory," the council speaker said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "You have entered swarm space and are conducting offensive operations. This exceeds your stated mission of defending the Allar." Elena looked around the chamber calmly. "Our mission was never just defense. Our mission was to ensure the Allar would never face this threat again." "You're committing genocide," a Silthi representative shouted. "The Vertex swarm has consumed over 200 civilizations in the last 3,000 years, Elena replied. "They have killed trillions of beings. They exist only to consume. We are removing a threat to all galactic life." Councillor Vrex stood. His scales were pale with stress. "Reports from the front lines are disturbing. Your forces are not just defeating the swarm. You're hunting them systematically." "You're sterilizing entire worlds," Elena nodded. "Yes, we are." The simple admission caused an uproar in the chamber. Species began shouting over each other. The council speaker had to activate the silence field twice before order was restored. "How can you admit this so casually?" the speaker asked. "Because we're doing exactly what we said we would do," Elena answered. "We told the galaxy we were here to collect a debt. The Allar saved us when we were dying. We're saving them by ensuring the swarm can never threaten them again. That means complete elimination. She pulled up a holographic display. It showed a star map with dozens of systems marked in red. The swarm occupied 47 star systems. We've cleared 32 so far. In each system, we've eliminated every swarm organism, destroyed every breeding facility, and burned every hive structure down to bedrock. This is monstrous, someone whispered. Elena's eyes flashed with anger. Monstrous? The swarm uses sentient beings as incubators. They consume children. They turn entire civilizations into organic matter for their hives. We found evidence in their territory of 15 different species being used as breeding stock. We freed what prisoners we could and gave mercy to those too far gone. She stepped closer to the council seats. You know what's truly monstrous? That this council knew about the swarm for 3,000 years and did nothing. You had the power to stop them. You chose not to. You hid behind laws and procedures while civilizations died. The chamber fell silent. Several species looked away in shame. How many casualties have you taken? Admiral of the Kresh fleet asked. His species was legendary as warriors, and even he sounded disturbed. 47,000 dead, Elena said quietly. Another 100,000 wounded. Every single one of them a volunteer. Every single one of them knew what they were signing up for. And swarm casualties? Elena's expression didn't change. Estimated 800 million organisms across all eliminated systems. We don't take prisoners. We don't leave survivors. When we clear a system, it stays cleared. A junior ambassador from the Vex Collective, a peaceful hive mind species, spoke up nervously. We've been monitoring quantum channels. We can feel the swarm's death screams. They're in pain. They're afraid. Even a hive mind doesn't deserve this. They used Allar children as incubators, Elena said coldly. They deserve worse than we're giving them. Admiral Chen's fleet had reached the edge of swarm territory proper. Intelligence suggested that beyond this point lay Node Prime, the central world where the swarm's oldest and largest node mind resided. Status report, Chen ordered from his command chair. All ships ready, sir. Reaper divisions are requesting permission to lead the ground assault. Chen nodded. Granted. Captain Okonkwo, you have the con for ground operations. On the surface of Node Prime, the swarm prepared its final defense. The node overmind, ancient beyond measure, had never retreated before. It would not start now. It gathered every creature, every resource, every ounce of biomass on the planet for one massive defensive stand. The node overmind sent a message on all frequencies. It was the first time the swarm had communicated directly with another species in recorded history. We are eternal. We are inevitable. You are temporary. You will be consumed. Admiral Chen listened to the message and smiled grimly. Send response. You consumed the wrong people's friends. The battle for Node Prime was the largest military engagement humanity had ever participated in. 2,000 human ships against the collected might of the swarm's remaining forces. The space battle lasted for 3 days. Human ships took heavy casualties, but they never retreated. When ammunition ran low, they rammed swarm vessels. When systems failed, engineers made repairs while still under fire. The determination was absolute. On the 3rd day, the swarm's orbital defenses fell. The Reapers landed. Captain Sarah Okonkwo led 6 divisions of specialized soldiers into the heart of the largest hive structure in swarm history. The node overmind itself resided here, a creature the size of a small city controlling billions of swarm organisms through quantum entanglement. The fighting in the tunnels was brutal. Swarm warriors, larger and more evolved than any encountered before, threw themselves at the human forces. The Reapers responded with flamethrowers, explosives, and unshakable resolve. Sarah's division reached the central chamber after 36 hours of continuous combat. Half her soldiers were dead or wounded, but they had kept pushing forward. The node overmind was massive, a pulsing mass of neural tissue connected to thousands of organic tendrils running throughout the hive. It spoke directly into their minds. You cannot kill us. We are in every corner of the galaxy. We will return. We will consume your species. We will consume the Allar. We are infinite. Sarah looked at the creature and felt nothing but cold purpose. She thought about the Allar children she had found in the breeding facility. She thought about her squad mates who had died in her first encounter with the swarm. She thought about the 50,000 Allar who had died bringing the cure to Earth. You're right about one thing, she said aloud. You are in every corner of the galaxy. That's why we brought these. Her soldiers deployed devices around the chamber, specialized bioweapons designed by human scientists specifically for this moment. Weapons developed using knowledge from the Cascade Plague, turned into instruments of complete elimination. These weapons target your specific genetic markers, Sarah explained. They'll spread through your quantum connection to every swarm organism in the galaxy. Within 72 hours, the Vertox swarm will cease to exist. You cannot do this, the Note Overmind's mental voice screamed. We are a species. You commit genocide. You've committed genocide against 200 species, Sarah replied. Today the bill comes due. She activated the weapons. The effect was not immediate. The bioweapons spread slowly through the swarm's quantum network, carried by the very connection that made them powerful. Node Prime fell silent within 6 hours. Outlying swarm territories took longer. The Galactic Council watched in real time as monitoring stations across the galaxy reported the same thing. Swarm organisms were dying. Not from violence, but from biological collapse. Their own genetic structure was turning against them. This is genocide, the Silthi representative said, her voice hollow. Systematic, planned, and executed genocide. Yes, Elena agreed. She showed no remorse. And it was necessary. Councillor Vrex had stopped arguing hours ago. He simply watched the displays, his face pale. His people had been warriors for millennia, and even they had never done anything like this. Do you understand what you've done? He asked Elena quietly. You've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of when they decide something needs to end. You've made yourselves the most feared species in known space. I know, Elena said, and I want you to remember that. Remember what happened when someone threatened the Allari. Remember that humanity never forgets a debt, and remember that we will do absolutely anything to protect those we care about. The Eldrin speaker, who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, spoke for the first time in hours. What will you do now? You have the most powerful military in the galaxy. You've proven you're willing to use it without mercy. What stops you from becoming the next threat? Elena met his ancient gaze. The same thing that always stopped us. We don't want to conquer. We don't want to rule. We want to be left alone in peace with our friends. The Allari are our friends. They saved us. We saved them. Now we're going home. And if someone threatens humanity? Vrex asked. Elena's smile was cold and sharp. Then we'll remember that debt too. 72 hours after the bioweapon was deployed, the last swarm organism died. The Vortex swarm, which had terrorized the galaxy for 3 millennia, was extinct. Human forces began withdrawing from swarm territory. They left behind burned worlds and sterilized hive structures. Nothing remained that could regenerate. Nothing remained that could threaten anyone ever again. On Allar Seth, Tishen stood with Elena at a memorial ceremony. They were unveiling a monument to the 50,000 Allari who had died during the Cascade Plague, and the 47,000 humans who had died during the Swarm War. Was it worth it? Tishen asked quietly. All those lives? Elena looked at the names carved into the monument. We didn't start this war. The Swarm did when they attacked your people. We just finished it. 5 years had passed since the Swarm War ended. The galaxy had changed in ways both visible and invisible. On Allar Seth, Ambassador Tishen walked through the rebuilt capital city. Where once there had been ruins and organic corruption, now stood new buildings. The Allari had recovered faster than anyone expected, helped by human engineering teams and massive reconstruction funds that humanity had provided without being asked. But the city was different now. On every corner there were human cultural centers. Human restaurants served Earth food. Human music played in the parks. The Allari children learned human languages in school alongside their own. The two species had become inseparable. Where you found Allari, you found humans. Where you found humans, you found Allari. The bond forged in plague and war had become something deeper. Family. Tishen met with Elena at their usual cafe, a place that served both human coffee and Allari spiced tea. Elena had retired from her position as ambassador but still visited regularly. How are things on Earth? Tishen asked. Complicated, Elena admitted. The younger generation doesn't remember the plague. They don't understand why we did what we did. Some of them think we went too far. Did we? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anymore. We saved your people. We eliminated a threat to the entire galaxy. But we also killed 800 million organisms. Some nights I can't sleep thinking about it. The swarm gave you no choice. There's always a choice, Tishen. We chose total war. We chose extinction over compromise. That choice has consequences. Those consequences had become clear over the years. Humanity's military capabilities were now public knowledge. Every species in the galaxy treated humans with cautious respect. Trade with humanity had increased, but so had fear. The human protocols had been formally added to galactic law. Never threaten species under human protection. Never attack human civilians. Never force humans into a corner. The protocols weren't laws so much as survival guidelines, but not everyone followed them. The Carathian Dominion was an old empire, proud and aggressive. They had been expanding for centuries, conquering primitive species on the frontier. They had watched the Swarm War with interest and concluded something different from other species. They decided humanity was bluffing. The Swarm was a special case, they thought. Humanity wouldn't risk another war so soon. The Dominion began expanding again, enslaving species on the frontier, carefully avoiding Allar space and human colonies. On Earth, retired Admiral Marcus Chen worked in his garden when the news alert came. The Dominion had enslaved 3 colony worlds belonging to the Trell, a peaceful species of farmers and artists. The images showed Trell civilians in chains being transported to work camps. Marcus felt old anger stirring in his chest. But he was retired. This wasn't his fight. Then he saw a second news report. A group of human veterans had formed a mercenary company. They called themselves the Free Companies, and they had deployed to Trell space without government authorization. They were fighting the Dominion using their own funds and equipment. Marcus watched footage of former Reapers fighting Dominion soldiers. The humans were outnumbered, but they were winning through superior tactics and absolute determination. It reminded him of the Swarm War. Then the third news report came. The Dominion had captured one of the Free Companies. 53 humans. The Dominion executed them publicly and sent the footage to every human world. The message from the Dominion Emperor was clear. Stay in your borders, mammals. This doesn't concern you. Marcus dropped his gardening tools and walked inside. His communicator was full of messages from other veterans. The question was simple: do we respond? This was different from the Swarm War. Humanity owed the Trell nothing. There was no debt to collect. This would be a war of choice, not obligation. The Terran coalition government announced a global referendum. Should humanity intervene in the Dominion-Trell conflict? The vote would take place in 72 hours. Elena watched the news on Allar and felt her heart sink. She knew how this would end. She had seen the look in human eyes during the Swarm War. That same look was appearing again. They're going to vote yes, Tishin said quietly, watching the news with her. I know. But why? The Trell didn't save them. There's no debt. Elena smiled sadly. You still don't understand humans, old friend. We didn't just pay our debt to you. We learned something about ourselves. We learned that we can make a difference. We learned that we have the power to stop monsters. Once you learn that, you can't unlearn it. The referendum results came in after 72 hours. 87% of humans voted yes. The message was clear. We don't do this because we owe anyone. We do this because it's right. The Galactic Council emergency session was smaller this time. Only 15 species bothered to show up. Everyone knew what was coming. Elena, brought out of retirement for this moment, stood before the Council again. The Terran Coalition formally declares our intention to intervene in the Dominion-Trell conflict. On what grounds? Councillor Vrex asked tiredly. He looked like he had aged a decade and 5 years. On the grounds that slavery is an abomination and we will not tolerate it near our borders. The Trell are not near your borders. Then we're expanding our definition of near, Elena replied. The Dominion was warned. The human protocols are clear. They executed our citizens. They refused to release the Trell. They chose this war. The council speaker, the ancient Eldrin, looked at her with sad eyes. You're going to destroy them, aren't you? Just like the Swarm? No, Elena said. Not like the Swarm. The Dominion is made up of sentient beings capable of choice. We'll give them chances to surrender. We'll accept prisoners. We'll follow the rules of war. But we will not stop until the Trell are free and the Dominion's slave camps are empty. And if they don't surrender? Elena's expression hardened. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Swarm learned. Humanity protects its friends, and anyone who fights against that protection will regret it. The war with the Dominion was different from the Swarm War. Humanity didn't fight alone this time. 23 other species joined them. Inspired by human determination, the Allar sent medical ships and supplies. Even the Kresh, legendary warriors, sent observers to learn from human tactics. But most importantly, humans fought differently. They showed mercy where possible. They accepted surrenders. They treated prisoners according to galactic law. When Dominion soldiers laid down their weapons, humans let them live. Captain Sarah Okonkwo, promoted to general, led the ground campaign. Her tactics were still brutal but focused. She didn't burn entire planets. She struck military targets and freed slave camps with surgical precision. A captured Dominion officer asked her why. "During the Swarm War, you showed no mercy. Why are you being gentle with us?" Sarah looked at him. The haunted look in her eyes had faded somewhat, replaced with something harder to define, because the Swarm was incapable of choice. "You're not. Every Dominion soldier has the option to surrender, to stop fighting, to choose peace. The Swarm only knew consumption. You can know better, and if we don't surrender, then you'll die," Sarah said simply. "But that's your choice to make." The war lasted 6 months. The Dominion fought fiercely at first, but human forces, backed by their galactic allies, pushed steadily forward. When the Dominion Emperor finally realized he was losing, he sued for peace. The terms were harsh but fair. All slaves freed, all slave camps dismantled, war reparations to the Trell. Dominion military restricted to defensive forces only. Human observers stationed on Dominion worlds for 10 years to ensure compliance. The Emperor signed the treaty with shaking hands. He looked at the human delegation with fear and resentment. "You've humiliated us." General Sarah Okonkwo, who signed for humanity, shook her head. "No, you humiliated yourselves when you chose slavery over civilization. We just made sure you couldn't do it anymore." On Earth, Marcus Chen watched the treaty signing and felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride that humanity had stood up for the helpless, sadness for the lives lost, concern about what humanity was becoming. His granddaughter, who had volunteered for the free companies, had survived the war. She came to visit him in his garden, still wearing her uniform. "We did good, didn't we, Grandpa?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. She was 22 years old, and she had already fought in a war. She had killed people. She would carry that weight forever. "We did what was necessary," he said carefully. "But never think war is good, even when it's necessary. War is always a failure. It's what happens when better options run out. But the Trell are free now, yes, and that matters. But remember the cost. Remember the people who died on both sides. Remember that every battle we win makes the next war more likely, because everyone sees us as the solution to their problems." 10 years after the Swarm War, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace. Humanity patrolled trade lanes, protecting weaker species. The Allar and humans had effectively merged their cultures, becoming a dual civilization. Other species sought human alliance and human protection, but there were whispers, concerns. Some species quietly asked, "What happens when humanity decides we're the monsters? What happens when the protectors become the threat?" In the Galactic Council chamber, now expanded to include the Trell and several other species humanity had helped, a historian gave a presentation about the human age,